My husband and I were in Canary Islands on a trip that our daughter gifted us. During this joyful journey, something unexpected happened. We ran into my ex-fiancé, who is a doctor, along with the friends who stole him from me. They looked down on us and started talking badly about us. But when my husband asked, "Do you know who I am?" everything changed for them, and their lives took a turn for the worse. I'm Jenna, 51 years old, living with my husband, Julian. Our daughter, Maud, has become independent and is busy with her work and love life. She visits us occasionally and shares different stories, which makes us happy because she seems to be leading a fulfilling life. Maud is not Julian's child. Her real father passed away from illness when Maud was just 5 years old. It was a deeply sad time for us, and it took a long time to recover. However, thanks to a certain person, we were able to enjoy life again, though that same person would later betray us. 20 years ago, my husband suddenly collapsed and was rushed to the hospital for emergency care. A few months later, he passed away. At first, I couldn't accept this reality and spent my days in deep sadness, barely able to take care of Maud. Working was out of the question. My mother, who came to help from my parents' home out of concern, suggested that I see a psychiatrist. Dr. Austin, the psychiatrist who treated me, was incredibly understanding and kind. He and his father ran the clinic together, treating many patients as a two-person team. It was always busy because of the number of people needing help, but despite everything, Dr. Austin showed concern for Maud, who had suddenly lost her dad, and suggested she attend sessions with me. I was so caught up in my own problems that I didn't realize Maud was also hurting. I blamed myself, thinking I was a failure as a mom and wondering if things would be better if I weren't around. It's easy to lose sight of everything when you suddenly lose a partner you've been with for years. Dr. Austin never dismissed my feelings. He gave me medication and also provided emotional support. He told me, "Please come in right away if anything happens. If it's hard to come to the clinic, please call this number." He handed me a business card with his phone number on it. At first, I thought it might be a bother to call him, but I also knew I might need it in desperate times. Once, when I was feeling so low that I considered leaving this world and leaving Maud behind, I called Dr. Austin for help. He listened to my tearful words without interrupting, offering advice and encouragement that greatly relieved me. Just as I was about to hang up, he said, "If it's okay with you, I can give you my ID so you can send me messages." We started exchanging messages, and thanks to that, I gradually began to feel better. The days when I didn't think about my late husband became more frequent, and I eventually recovered enough to return to work. I sent Dr. Austin a message of gratitude, thanking him for everything. Then, to my surprise, he replied, "Jenna, if it's all right with you, I'd like to be there for you in your personal life too." I was shocked. I never imagined Dr. Austin had feelings for me. He said, "I understand you're a widow and heartbroken, but to be honest, I fell in love with you at first sight. I really like you and would never leave you. Would you consider being in a relationship with me?" His sudden confession took me by surprise. I wasn't aware of his feelings and couldn't believe he would want to pursue a relationship with a patient. Dr. Austin is handsome and well off, so I couldn't understand why he would be interested in a single mother like me. I shared my honest thoughts with him, but he assured me, "You're the only one for me. I can't even think about other women." Hearing this, and considering how much he had supported Maud and me, I decided to start dating him. In hindsight, it was risky for a doctor to pursue a relationship with a patient, especially someone like me, living far from the world of luxury. But despite these concerns, we continued our relationship for about a year. "I want to support Jenna and Maud for life," Austin said when he proposed. After discussing it thoroughly with Maud, we happily got engaged. Austin was very affectionate toward Maud, and they even went to the park together on weekends. One day, at the park, I met Kate again. Her mom, Sydney, and Austin were chatting the whole time. Austin was also great at getting along with the other moms. which made me trust him completely. Even though we weren't married yet, he was already involved with the mom friends, and I thanked him for that. Austin just laughed and said, "That's normal. Once we're married, it's the natural thing to do." I thought Austin was truly wonderful. Then one day, in the middle of our happy life, Kate said something that caught me off guard. She told me that Austin was going to be her dad soon, just like he was going to be Maud's dad. I was stunned for a moment but brushed it off, thinking it was just a child's imagination. Austin was great with kids, and I figured Kate just liked him and was pretending. So I didn't think much of it. But that night, everything changed. Austin told me, "I'm sorry, but let's forget about the marriage." I was confused and immediately asked him why. He confessed, "Actually, I've fallen for someone else." Maud's words flashed through my mind, and I asked, "Don't tell me it's Sydney, Kate's mom." Austin froze, his face turning pale. Seeing his reaction, I realized he had planned to break up with me without mentioning Sydney. It shocked me that he would go after a married woman, especially the mother of Maud's friend. I felt betrayed and pleaded with Austin, trying to hold back my tears. But he cut me off, shouting, "Shut up." I was stunned by his sudden change. Luckily, Maud was staying at my parents' house at the time. Austin then added, "Sydney is more beautiful than you, and we're more physically compatible. Besides, you've been rejecting me lately because of Maud." I couldn't believe he chose Sydney for such shallow reasons. Whether Austin initiated it or Sydney did, it didn't matter, they both had crossed a line. As I tried to process everything, Austin made a cruel remark, saying he was drawn to the idea of being with a grieving widow. "I liked the way you looked, even though your clothes and hair were a bit shabby. But it was your appearance as a widow that really attracted me. I wanted to control you." It was awful to realize that he never loved me for who I was. He continued, "I kept treating you because I didn't want another doctor to take you away. It was a mistake that you recovered so well. Maybe it's thanks to my skills as a doctor. I should have made sure you kept coming to the hospital." I was shocked and couldn't understand what he was saying. As Austin continued his hurtful words, I quickly became disillusioned with him. I had had enough and said, "Let's break up, and you'll pay compensation for breaking off the engagement." Austin looked surprised for a moment, but seemed eager to be with Sydney. "I'm a doctor, and money is no problem for me. Here, take it. With your poor appearance, you should go to a beauty salon. But since you'll be a single mother now, maybe not." And so, my relationship with the despicable Austin ended. I also demanded compensation from Sydney. She said, "Since you're a single mother, you'll need money. Fine, I'll donate this to you. In return, I'll take Austin without any hesitation. Bye, greedy poor person." I was never particularly close to Sydney, but I never imagined her character could be this bad. At this point, it seemed those two were a perfect match for each other. In fact, I even thought it was probably for the best that Sydney took Austin away. Later, I found out that Sydney got divorced, and within 3 months, both she and Austin had left town. However, since Austin's father's clinic was in the area, they likely hadn't moved far away. By the way, Kate, who was excited about Austin becoming her dad, ended up under the custody of Sydney's husband. Apparently, it was too difficult for Sydney's husband to raise Kate alone, so he also moved back to his parents' home. This news made Maud burst into tears. "I didn't want Austin to leave," she cried. More than being upset about Sydney taking Austin away, I was heartbroken to see Maud cry. I had never wished for someone's misfortune before, but after everything that happened, I sincerely hoped those two would be unhappy. Now, at 51, I'm very happy. I thought I was done with men, but then I met someone by chance and remarried. He's nothing like the despicable Austin, a truly wonderful man who cares deeply for both Maud and me. His name is Julian, and he's 55 years old. Although he's usually busy with work, he frequently makes time for our family. Now that Maud is independent and it's just the two of us, we're living like newlyweds. Then one day, he handed me something and said, "Here, take this and go enjoy Canary Islands." I received tickets to Canary Islands from Maud, who had gotten a bonus at work. She even booked the hotel for us. "Oh no, that's too much," I said, feeling overwhelmed. It was our first overseas trip. "Aren't you coming with us, Maud?" I asked. "It's a token of my appreciation for all you've done, so go enjoy it together," she replied. We accepted Maud's kind offer and decided to go on the trip to Canary Islands. It was our first overseas trip as a couple, and it was incredibly fun. After a long day of sightseeing, we headed back to our hotel. Suddenly, I heard a voice. "Huh, is that Jenna?" I turned towards the voice and, to my surprise, saw Austin and Sydney, the ones who had betrayed me at the same hotel we were staying in. "Who's that?" Austin asked, pointing at Julian. "He's my husband," I replied. Both of them started laughing. "You remarried, but your new man looks, I don't know, kind of poor," they said, suddenly insulting Julian. It's true that Julian isn't fussy about his appearance and rarely wears brand-name clothes. "Excuse me, but what brand is that outfit?" Austin asked in a clearly condescending tone. When Julian mentioned the name of a clothing chain store, the two of them burst into laughter. "What? You shop there? You're poorer than I thought. Unbelievable. Isn't that the store where only really broke people shop?" They mocked a person they had just met, and I was so shocked that I couldn't speak. "You seem to be struggling with money, yet you're on a trip to Canary Islands. Are you sure it's okay?" Austin questioned. Julian responded calmly, "Actually, it's a gift from our daughter, which we're very grateful for." Julian's smile and composure showed a mature response. "Daughter? You mean Maud? She's already an adult, but it's pathetic to beg your own child for a trip to Canary Islands. If you're going to beg, ask for clothes, not a trip," they continued mocking. "Exactly, Jenna, still living a poor life even after getting married. Isn't that crazy?" Their rudeness was too much, and I was furious, ready to respond. But before I could say anything, Julian spoke up. "Excuse me, but Jenna is not poor. While it's questionable to berate a stranger, I cannot tolerate insults toward Jenna." Julian stood up for me. "Huh? What are you trying to prove, poor man? Do you even know who I am?" "I'm a doctor," Austin boasted while laughing. "Really? You're a doctor?" Julian calmly asked. "Yes, I am the only son of a clinic owner, and I'll be taking over as the head doctor soon." "Impressive, right?" Austin continued arrogantly. "Doctors are rich and can choose any woman they want. You poor people are in a different league, you just look poor." I couldn't bear to listen to Austin's words anymore, and meanwhile, Sydney stood there with a nasty smirk on her face. "You keep calling me poor, but do you even know who I am?" Julian asked, clearly frustrated. Austin, thinking he had the upper hand, dismissed him as just some poor guy. In the short time we had been talking, Austin had used the word poor so much that it seemed like his favorite insult. It was obvious that he looked down on others. But then Julian said something that completely changed the smug attitudes of both Austin and Sydney. "Actually, I think I'm quite well off," Julian began. "I run a pharmaceutical company." "What?" Austin exclaimed, clearly shocked. Yes, Julian had inherited a major pharmaceutical company from his father. In fact, he even supplied the hospital where Austin worked. The realization hit Austin hard. He finally understood who Julian was. "No way. You're the president of the company we rely on." Seeing Austin's shocked expression, Sydney started to panic. Julian remained calm and polite, saying, "Thank you for using our services," with such elegance that I found myself falling for him all over again. Sydney, desperate to regain control, snapped, "So what if you're a pharmaceutical company president? If the doctors decide not to use your drugs, it's over, right?" Austin, "Stop dealing with this guy's company." But Julian wasn't fazed. "That's not possible," he replied. "The decision is made by the head doctor and the pharmacists. It's not something I can interfere with. Austin's face turned pale as he realized the gravity of the situation. Sydney, too, went pale as the reality of what they had done sank in. "Did we just make a huge mistake?" she asked, and Austin could only nod in response. Julian continued, "I've had a long relationship with your father. We've played golf together and shared meals. Our relationship has grown from just a business one to a friendship." Hearing this, Austin deeply bowed and apologized. "I'm so sorry. I'll speak to my father, the head doctor, about this." Meanwhile, Sydney stood there in a daze, and Austin looked utterly defeated. "That's not going to work," Julian said calmly. "The moment you insulted Jenna, I started recording everything." He had sensed the hostility in the air and had begun recording the conversation on his phone right away. "I really am sorry," Austin stammered. "I shouldn't have called you poor." He was apologizing profusely now. Julian approached him, his voice firm. "Jenna has told me before that her ex-fiancé was a jerk the worst kind. And now, here you are, with Maud's friend's mom, still insulting Jenna. There's a limit to how much you can disrespect someone." Julian's words hit Austin hard, leaving him speechless. Both Austin and Sydney fell completely silent, realizing the full extent of their mistake. I felt a wave of happiness as Julian stood up for me, and his courage inspired me to confront Austin and Sydney as well. Ever since they got together, I had always thought Austin was just right for Sydney cheating while having a child and insulting people without a second thought. "You two are perfect for each other with your terrible characters," I said, my voice steady. "So thank you, Sydney, for taking such a lousy man off my hands." The two of them probably never expected me to speak up like that. I continued, "And what kind of nerve do you have, insulting someone you've just met, especially on a vacation? My husband, no less, calling him poor and whatnot. How old are you both? Is your mind all right? To anyone watching, you two seem like the crazy ones." At my words, I saw a hint of realization cross their faces. "No, we were just drunk," Sydney stammered. "And seeing you after so long, looking so happy, she trailed off, trying to excuse their behavior. "Such an excuse is unacceptable," I replied firmly. "So being drunk excuses anything. And what does it matter if I looked happy? It's sad that you can't be happy for someone else's happiness." Julian addressed them calmly but firmly. "We might never meet again, but don't ever say such terrible things again." With those parting words, we walked away, leaving them standing there, still trying to apologize. As we left, I could hear them saying, "I'm really sorry," over and over. Julian, still angry, decided to send the recording he had made to Austin's father. Not long after, Austin's dad called. After Julian explained the situation, it was clear that Austin's father was furious. Having met him a few times, I knew he was a strict man, and this news would not sit well with him. I could easily imagine Austin facing the wrath of his father. After their conversation, Austin's dad called us to apologize and said he would deal with Austin. Then he hung up. For Austin and Sydney, it must have been the worst Canary Islands trip ever. If they hadn't confronted us that day, we could have been enjoying ourselves at the hotel instead. A few days later, something unexpected happened. Austin's dad, along with Austin and Sydney, showed up at our house. Sydney was wearing light makeup, and both of them had noticeably red faces, clearly embarrassed. "We are truly sorry for what we did," they apologized sincerely. Acknowledging that they had wronged us, they offered a substantial amount of money as compensation. At first, we refused, but they insisted, so we accepted it. After that, the three of them left. Later, Austin's dad told Julian that Austin and Sydney had gotten divorced. It turned out that Austin's father had pressured them into it. He had never approved of their marriage from the start. Moreover, Austin was supposed to take over the family clinic, but that plan was now off, and he even faced a salary cut. As for Sydney, I didn't know what became of her afterward, but I recently heard a rumor that she was spotted working in a mature women's delivery service, looking quite haggard and struggling. Who could have imagined such an ending for someone who abandoned her child and stole her classmate's mom's fiancé? But I thought it was their responsibility to deal with the consequences of their actions. As for us, we felt upset after that incident, but after a good night's sleep, we felt refreshed and enjoyed the rest of our Canary Islands trip. When we told Maud about our experience, she laughed and said, "That's a good example of the kind of adult not to become." Indeed, I thought it was for the best that we had split up with Austin, especially for Maud's sake. Now, we're planning our next family vacation, eagerly looking forward to our happy trip together.